The next thing on our list of things to talk about, we have modal auxiliaries. Modal auxiliaries are relatively simple as long as you know how to conjugate each one of them and know what they mean. So the definitions of them could show up as part of your matching section for this exam, or the modal auxiliaries themselves could show up as like part of those slash mark sentences we talked about before. I always do them in the same order. I don't know why, but I do. So we have dürfen, which means may or to be allowed to. And this one is conjugated as ich darf, du darfst, sie es darf, wir dürfen, ihr dürft, sie dürfen, sie dürfen. And each one of them is only going to be irregular before the plural form. So wir, ihr, and sie, those are all considered to be the plural forms, and those forms are regular. All you do is you drop your endings and you add en or t like you normally would. In the case of the z form and the z form and the wir form, you don't have to worry about dropping letters. You can just use the infinitive form. It's the same thing, basically. Same thing happens with any of the other ones. We have können, can or to be able to, and you would use ich kann, du kannst, sie es kann, wir können, ihr könnt, sie können, sie können. And again, only the ones that are in the singular forms are going to be irregular. They all take a stem change of some sort. And the next one on our list is sollen, should or to be supposed to, as in like it's supposed to rain tomorrow. That's going to be using sollen. And that one's conjugated normally, sort of. We have soll, sollst, soll, sollen, sollt, sollen. And again, the only ones that are weird are above the line. And the only ones that are actually weird in this case is the ich and the RZS forms, which are the same as opposed to having an e or a t at the end of them. All of the modal auxiliaries are going to be like this. They don't have any difference between the ich and the RZS forms. Also on our list of modal auxiliaries, we have 3 M's. Mögen, to like. Möchten, would like, which is actually a form of mögen, and müssen, to have to, or must. If you're going to conjugate mögen, we have to go with ich mag, du magst, sie es mag, wir mögen. That's an ugly M. Wir mögen, ihr mögt, sie mögen. Then we have möchten, which is one of those that doesn't change again, but that's because it's actually technically subjunctive, which is why it has the e at the end of the, at the end of the ich and RZS forms. Ich möchte, du möchtest, RZS möchte, wir möchten, ihr möchtet, sie möchten, sie möchten. And the last one, müssen, this one drops the umlaut for the first 3 forms and then keeps it for the last 3 forms. Ich muss, du musst, sie es muss, wir müssen, ihr müsst, sie müssen, sie müssen. And there is one that we skipped, and that is wollen. Wollen is to want. And you would conjugate that one with an I for the first three forms. Ich will, du willst, sie es will, wir wollen, ihr wollt, sie wollen, sie wollen. And then the other one that isn't technically a modal auxiliary but is actually a future tense is will, as in werden. It's also used to become or to turn into, but that's only used whenever it's in the present tense, or if it's, like I will become. That's ich werde werden. I will become. But it's conjugated slightly differently than the other ones. The first form is actually regular, so we have ich werde. Then we have the two irregular forms du wirst and du wird. Sie es wird. Then back to regular forms again, werden, werdet, and werden. Yes, sir. It acts like a modal auxiliary, and that's why I classify it as modal auxiliary, but it isn't actually technically a modal auxiliary. It's actually used as a future tense. It's a different tense, as opposed to being in the same tense, but as a helping verb. So it pretends to be one, but isn't. It's a poser. Werden is also weird because it is irregular in the do and RZS forms, which makes it a normal irregular verb, if that makes any sense. Irregular verbs are irregular in the do and RZS form, and so this one is technically classified as an irregular verb and would be conjugated as such, and it actually acts a lot like one. So that's why it's only irregular in these two forms, as opposed to being irregular in all three of the top forms, because obviously it's not actually technically a modal auxiliary. Now, none of that helps you if you don't know how to use them. Every time that you use a modal auxiliary, if you start out with a sentence that says something like, ich gehe nach Hause, I am going home. If you want to say, like, I want to go home, you would have to, first of all, take this verb and put it at the end of the sentence as an infinitive, and replace the verb with your modal auxiliary as the conjugated form. So conjugate wollen as ich will, I want, nach Hause, home, and then your infinitive form of the verb. So ich will nach Hause gehen, I want to go home. Yes, sir?
Do they move this in 10 minutes as well?
Eventually, yes.
And which is which?
Mm-hmm. Ich will nach Hause gehen, I want to go home, and this works for any modal auxiliary like I can go home, ich kann nach Hause gehen, or ich möchte nach Hause gehen, I would like to go home, or ich muss nach Hause gehen, I have to go home. Any of those, you just replace wherever the verb normally would be, put your modal auxiliary and conjugate it, and then put your infinitive form of your verb at the end of the sentence. This works out for separable prefix verbs as well, such as ich lade deine Mutter ein. I'm inviting your mother. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So if you take this and say, like, I want to invite your mother, you would say, ich will deine Mutter einladen. Einladen is the infinitive form. Ein and laden then end up back together, like that clingy couple who continually break up and get back together. That's separable prefix verbs.
You mean Taylor Swift?
Yeah, Taylor Swift.
She doesn't break up and get back together.
Yeah, she in fact will never get back together.
She just breaks up and gets together with another person. So basically just one half Taylor Swift couple.
So, anyway, those are your modal auxiliaries. As long as you can conjugate them and you can identify where to put your verb whenever you're writing things out. So, that helps, maybe, some.